He said yes. He finally looked into your eyes, into your soul, and chose the love. It was the moment you had prayed for, waited for, worked for. But instead of peace came pressure. Instead of alignment came confusion. Instead of flowing forward, everything felt like it was falling apart. Why? Because saying yes to sacred union isn't a romantic conclusion. It's a spiritual initiation. And when the masculine agrees to the bond, he doesn't just marry you, he marries his own becoming. Have you ever received the yes you waited for, only to feel everything shift? Leave a comment. Your story might help another soul navigate the fire after the promise. You got the yes. Now what? He said yes. After all the cycles, the silent nights, the moments you doubted everything, the inner work you did alone, year after year, he finally said yes, and you expected relief, joy, certainty. The dream finally realized. But instead, you felt a strange ache, a storm you didn't see coming, a confusion that made no sense. Because now that he said yes, everything feels heavier. Why? Because saying yes to spiritual union isn't a reward, it's a door. And behind that door is everything he was avoiding. When the masculine finally agrees to the connection, he doesn't just step into love. He steps into everything the love exposes. And that includes all the fear he suppressed, all the wounds he never wanted to face, all the illusions he built to survive. So while your heart is wide open, ready to receive, he starts to feel the pressure of his own soul demanding transformation. It's not that he regrets the yes. He meant it. But the moment he aligned with union on the outside, his inner world began to unravel. Because union is not just between two people. It's between two frequencies finally agreeing to meet. And when that agreement happens, everything in the field that doesn't match it must rise to the surface. So the chaos you're feeling, the emotional turbulence, the sudden coldness or hesitation in him, even after his yes, it's not rejection. It's the energetic purge. It's the old masculine identity crumbling, the patterns breaking, the ego panicking, and you, the feminine, feel it too. Not because you did something wrong, but because you're now holding space for someone who just stepped into a spiritual fire he didn't fully understand. This is not the end. This is the real beginning. Because now you're not preparing for union. You're in it. And union is raw, messy, sacred, chaotic, beautiful. So if you feel like everything changed the moment he finally said, "Yes." You're not broken. You're walking through the veil. And what's on the other side isn't the fantasy you imagined. It's the truth you've always been destined to live. Why his yes isn't always stable. You got the yes. He opened the door, stepped forward, met your heart, and said he was ready. Ready for the relationship, ready to claim the bond, ready to show up in a way he never had before. And for a moment, everything felt aligned. The union was finally taking form. But then, he changed. He withdrew. He started second-guessing. You felt the shift in his energy, the hesitation, the internal chaos. And you began to wonder, was the yes even real? It was. But here's what no one tells you. The masculine's yes is not always immediately stable. Not because it was false, but because it shook the very foundation of everything he built to survive. You see, when he says yes, he's not just saying it to you. He's saying yes to an entire shift in identity, to a different way of relating, to a completely new definition of intimacy, vulnerability, and power. And while that yes is real, his nervous system isn't ready for what it invites. His entire life, he's been conditioned to associate safety with control, with knowing the outcome, with holding a position of strength, with protecting his inner world by limiting his exposure to depth. But when he says yes to you, to this connection, he's simultaneously saying yes to all the ways he'll now have to let go of that control. He's opening to a love that doesn't fit into logic. He's stepping into a bond that doesn't follow conventional timelines. He's allowing a woman to see into places he hasn't even dared to enter himself. And that is terrifying. So his system rebels. Not because it doesn't want the connection, but because it doesn't know how to hold it yet. The yes is a soul decision, but his mind, body, and ego are still catching up. And this is where the feminine often gets confused, because from the outside, it looks like a contradiction. He said yes, and now he's emotionally distant. He committed, and now he seems overwhelmed. He moved toward you, and now he's gone quiet again. But on the energetic level, this is all part of the restructuring. He's being internally rewired. His sense of safety is shifting from I control to I surrender. And surrender doesn't happen in a straight line. Some days he'll rise with clarity. Other days he'll drown in doubt. Some moments he'll be fully present. Then he might pull away without warning. This isn't a game. It's not manipulation. It's not regression. It's integration. He's learning to walk in a space that feels too big for the version of himself he's lived as for years. And here's the truth most aren't ready to hear. The moment he says yes, his real work begins. Because now he's not just sensing the love, he's responsible for it. He has to face his patterns. He has to stay when it gets uncomfortable. He has to feel the weight of being fully seen, fully felt, fully chosen. And for someone who's used to hiding, that weight can feel like a burden at first. So what do you do as the feminine when his yes isn't stable? You don't panic. You don't shrink. You don't try to hold it for him. You stay in your truth. You embody your frequency. You trust the yes, not as a promise, but as an opening, because his soul said yes for a reason. And even if his ego trembles, even if his words change, even if he takes 2 steps back, the real yes is still echoing inside him. And eventually, the parts of him that resisted will catch up to the truth that's already alive in the field. From the outside, it may look like he said yes, and then everything got worse. But from the inside, something very different is happening. The moment the divine masculine truly commits, not just in words, but in soul, he enters a spiritual fire. It is not punishment. It is not resistance. It is a necessary initiation. Because in order to hold the frequency of union, he must be purified of everything that kept him separate. And that purification is not gentle. It shakes his mind. It triggers his body. It pulls old traumas from the basement of his heart and drags them into the light. This is the spiritual breakdown that no one talks about. The part of the journey where the masculine finally opens to the love and immediately begins to feel like he's falling apart. Why? Because the connection is no longer just a beautiful feeling. It's a mirror that reflects back everything he hasn't healed, every wound, every belief that says, I'm not enough, every fear of failure, abandonment, inadequacy. And for someone who spent most of his life building emotional armor, this kind of exposure feels like death. He's not just confronting his past. He's confronting the false identity he wore to survive, the strong one, the unbothered one, the independent one who doesn't need anyone. But now he needs you, not in a codependent way, but in the way a soul recognizes its counterpart and realizes, to walk forward, I can't do this alone anymore. That realization hits hard because it shatters the illusion of self-sufficiency and activates the grief of all the years he spent suppressing what he truly needed. So he may start to act out. He may push you away. He may become emotionally unpredictable. He may fall into silence or even disappear for a while. It doesn't mean the love is gone. It means the ego is losing control. He is going through a breakdown, yes, but it's a soul-led breakdown with a sacred purpose. It's not to destroy him. It's to strip away everything that blocks him from the love he already claimed. You may feel like you're losing him, but what's really happening is he's losing the parts of himself that couldn't stay. And the more space you give him to unravel, without pulling, chasing, or collapsing into fear, the more powerfully he can reassemble himself from a place of truth. Because this breakdown is the doorway to his becoming. Not the man he thought he needed to be, but the man his soul chose to be. The man who can meet you in union with presence, with integrity, with heart. The feminine's role here is sacred, not to fix, not to remind him of his yes every day, not to demand stability when he's shedding his identity. Your role is to stay centered, to hold the light, to be the frequency that reminds his soul you're safe to fall apart because you're also safe to rise. Because what happens after his yes isn't a collapse, it's a reconstruction. And from that sacred rubble, he will emerge, not just as your partner, but as a man who finally knows who he is beyond the pain. You thought this would be the moment you finally breathed. He said yes. He acknowledged the connection. He chose you. And for a second, it felt like peace. But then something shifted. He pulled back. Energy became chaotic. You felt him struggling, spiraling, second-guessing the very love he said yes to, and everything inside you started to question. What did I do wrong? Why isn't this unfolding the way it's supposed to? Why does it feel like everything fell apart right after the breakthrough? You're not alone, because in sacred unions, especially twin flames, the yes doesn't always bring calm. It brings activation. And when the masculine enters his spiritual breakdown after commitment, the feminine enters her most sacred responsibility yet, to stay centered when nothing feels certain. You are not here to hold the pain for both of you. You are not here to absorb his confusion or prove your worth again. You are here to be what you've always been, the lighthouse. When his internal storm begins, he needs to feel your light without it blinding him, your warmth without it burning him, your power without it demanding that he be ready. Because he's not abandoning you. He's abandoning an old self that cannot survive in this new frequency. And that process is violent, but holy. This is where many feminines begin to spiral. Not because they lack love, but because their love still depended on how things looked. And now, love is asking something deeper. Not, can you stay if he's perfect? But, can you stay in alignment when the form shifts and only the energy remains? Because in that moment, your alignment becomes the field, not your attachment, not your expectations, not your effort to help him ascend, but your quiet, unwavering devotion to your own center. You are the template, you are the mirror, and while he may be breaking, you are becoming the feminine that doesn't chase, that doesn't collapse when things get messy, that doesn't make his storm mean something about her worth. You are the space where his ego can fall and his soul can rise, without pressure, without performance, without shame. And here's the most important part. He can feel this, even when he's silent, even when he's distant, even when he acts like he doesn't care. He feels your frequency, and if your energy says, I am grounded, I am love, I am clear, whether you're beside me or not, he will begin to trust the path back to himself and back to you. The real union doesn't begin when he says yes. It begins when you choose not to abandon yourself in the face of his unraveling. This is the rebirth of the feminine. Not the one who waits for the masculine to lead, but the one who leads by standing still, by being rooted in what is real, by holding the energetic field steady as he learns to breathe in a truth he once feared. This is not about fixing him. It's about holding such deep presence that he finally remembers how to fix himself. And when he does, when the storm clears, he will look for the light that never flickered, the vibration that never wavered, the woman who stood in the fire, not burning, but becoming. You spent months, maybe years, praying for the union, visualizing it, aligning with it, doing your healing work, trusting divine timing. And then he said yes. The union finally arrived. The commitment was made, and a part of you whispered, "This is the reward. I've made it." But what if that moment wasn't the finish line? What if it was just the doorway into the most sacred and challenging chapter of all? Because here's what so many don't understand. Union is not the prize. It's the process. It's not the moment the work ends. It's the moment the real work begins. When you come into energetic union, you're not just celebrating love. You're being asked to embody it every single day. And that embodiment means letting go of the fantasy, releasing attachment to how it should look, stepping into radical presence, patience, and personal truth. Because union isn't a soft romance, it's a soul initiation. It brings up everything you thought you healed. It activates old fears in new ways. It exposes the last layers of ego still clinging to control. Why? Because you are no longer preparing for love. You are now living it. And to live it, you must be real. That's why so many are shocked by how intense it gets after the commitment. You expected peace, but instead you found pressure. You expected flow, but instead you felt friction. This is not failure, it's frequency calibration. Two souls carrying lifetimes of trauma, expectations, karmic imprints, and ancestral weight coming together in full presence. That's not a reward. That's an alchemical fire. And you're both in it. The masculine is shedding his identity. The feminine is anchoring hers. You're both being called into your highest truth, and the old versions of yourselves are screaming on the way out. This is sacred, and it's messy, and it's divine. Union is not about perfection. It's about devotion. The choice, over and over again, to stay honest, to keep showing up, to keep listening, to keep growing. You didn't come here to be saved. You came here to be transformed. And that transformation doesn't happen in the dream. It happens in the mundane, in the conflict, in the healing, in the stillness, in the rising again and again. So if you're standing in the middle of union and wondering why it feels more like a breakdown than a breakthrough, just breathe. This is the rebirth, not of the connection, but of you. You are shedding the illusion of what love should feel like, so you can finally embody what love is. And once both souls surrender to that, the real union begins, not as a moment, but as a frequency you choose, daily, fully, and freely. Let's be clear, he meant it. When he looked at you, when he said yes, when he finally opened his heart and chose the connection, it was real. That wasn't a game. That wasn't a script. That wasn't a maybe. It was his soul remembering. It was his ego stepping aside. It was a moment of deep surrender to a truth he could no longer deny. But what you may not have realized is that with that yes, you both stepped into a spiritual initiation, not just as lovers, not as soulmates, but as beings on the edge of sacred transformation. The moment he said yes, the divine began the deeper work. And that work is not always graceful. It doesn't feel like bliss. It feels like a dismantling, because love, when it's real, doesn't just hold, it heals. And healing always begins with exposure. So if his yes was followed by silence, if his commitment led to confusion, if his return triggered your own deepest wounds, don't doubt the truth. Don't undo the frequency. Don't tell yourself it wasn't real just because it doesn't look perfect. It was real, but so is the fire that comes to burn away every part of him that's not aligned with the man he's becoming. The fire that comes to test every part of you that still depends on outcome instead of essence. The fire that strips away illusion and reveals what you both still carry. Because the union is not just between you and him, it's between your truth and his awakening. And once the yes is given, that awakening cannot be stopped. He will be tested, he will face himself, he will feel lost. But in that loss, he will find the real version of him, the one that can stand beside you not as a promise, but as a presence. And you'll be asked to walk without clinging, to trust without needing, to love without fixing, to embody without waiting. You will be asked to stay faithful, not to the outcome, but to the energy that called this union into form. This initiation is sacred. It's not punishment. It's proof that your union matters. If it were just a relationship, you'd be celebrating already. But because it's a mission, you're being refined. Because it's divine, you're being invited into the kind of love that doesn't just change your life, it changes your frequency. And when the storm passes, when the fire clears, you'll look at each other not as who you were, but as who you truly are. Two souls stripped of illusion, rooted in self, grounded in truth. And from that place, the yes echoes again, not as a moment, but as a lifetime.